Now let's load the saved transaction in the database to the source of our data for view models, and that's the wallet controller. So again, I'm going to use the iRepository in order to get the transactions. So iRepository for transaction, just resolve that, call this transaction repository, and use the constructor to get the transaction repository. In our get transactions method, I will delete all this dummy data we have previously created and get the actual transactions from the database using our transaction repository, and the method is get all async. Since we are using await, we need to use async as well. And let's sort this transaction by transaction date. So we will show our transactions. First is going to be the latest, and the oldest is going to be at the bottom of our list. Okay, and before we return those transactions, two things we need to do. So for each transaction in our transactions, let's just set the actual image. So status image source will be determined based from the status. So if status is equal to the constants dot deposited, then we are using constants dot transaction deposited image. Otherwise we'll be using constants dot withdrawn image. And what's also missing in the transaction is the actual calculation of the transaction in dollar value. We will use our amount and times the actual price of the coin at the time of fetching the transaction from the database. For that we need the REST API, and since we will add the REST API functionality in the next section, for now just let's be patient and here add some fixed price. Like I mentioned, we will change that in the next section. Finally, we can return our transactions and see the changes. Immediately you can see the transaction we have created in the last lecture in the latest transaction section of the wallet view, and if we go to the transactions, you can see that we have the same transaction. So again, we are reusing the functionality of the wallet controller to display transactions in both transactions and the wallet view. And the same transaction is visible in the deposited tab. If we go to the withdrawn, this is obviously empty, but what we can do is to create one withdrawn transaction. Let's just add that to the database, and now we can also see the second transaction. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward to use the transaction repository to save and load all items from the database.